Hello, I'm the CommanderZander. I remember it so that a stage critic doesn't have to. And neither should you. 7 years ago, or somewhere around that time, came a movie that inspired the wonderful portrayal of the greatest president of all time, Abraham Lincoln, which won an Oscar and made Daniel Day-Lewis even more of a legit actor because he did a terrific job portraying the greatest president ever. Or at least that's what I think. If you think there's a president better, post in the comment section. But Lincoln was a very significant president in our time and age. In a time where race was a major issue, and yes, it's still an issue today, but not as severe as back then, Lincoln was able to turn a divided nation into one, or at least mend it into the process of being one again. And Daniel Day-Lewis's portrayal is magnificent. So, in the spirit of Daniel Day-Lewis month, we are going to look at Lincoln. Because Lincoln is freaking awesome. Let's roll. Alright, so credit for the movie, as you probably know, when it goes to Touchstone Pictures. An iconic name, as well as this iconic name. And one you would never think of when it comes to Lincoln. DreamWorks. Yes, the people responsible for Shrek are also in charge of this movie. YouTube, if you're watching, this is not for monetary purposes. This is strictly for review. So now that we've gotten that intro taken care of, we start our movie with the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln speaking to one of the soldiers of the war. I presume from the north. Or maybe the south, I don't know. This is an important intro to the movie because it shows Lincoln's caring of the people. He wants to make sure that everybody is equal and caring and forgiving. And this scene pretty much depicts it right off the bat.
No, we didn't fight there. We just signed up last month. We saw him 2 years ago at the cemetery dedication. Yeah, we heard you speak. Damn.
You can't even pronounce the word speech. It's speech! Speech, people, not speak. They, of course, reprised the most iconic line of the Gettysburg Address. The Gettysburg Address. I'm amazed that you're able to memorize the Gettysburg Address, but you can't pronounce speech. Interesting use of the brain, don't you think? Of course, what Lincoln's trying to do in this movie is to eventually come up with the, I think it's the 13th Amendment, if my memory serves me well, to try and abolish slavery. That is his goal in this movie. Because he knows that with the abolition of slavery, this nation can once again be whole again. Because they have been divided since the Revolutionary War. His compadre, whom you might remember from A League of Their Own, tries to implement his ways. And by his ways, I mean Lincoln's ways. See, look at that. You can see why I claim he does a great job of portraying Lincoln. He looks exactly like Lincoln. I mean, look at him. And that's credit to Daniel Day-Lewis for doing the research and figuring out what he sounded like, what he would say, all that stuff. That's why Daniel Day-Lewis is a legit actor, man. He does his research. Of course, in order for this to pass, he needs a certain amount of votes. I believe it's 9 out of 13 or something like that. And the amendment will pass.
The money I managed to raise for this endeavor is only for your fees, your food, and lodging.
Lincoln continues to struggle to find the votes needed in order to sway the people to abolish slavery. Which, again, for that day and age, that was really, really, really hard to do. Because, people are like, well, slavery makes money, but how do you think the black people would respond to that? They probably wouldn't be too thrilled about that. They were probably thrilled that Lincoln was trying to get rid of slavery. Because slavery should not be allowed. It's stupid, it's wrong, it's pathetic. Everybody should be treated equally. And that's why Lincoln rocks! This is another important scene where Lincoln shows his caring. This woman is grieving over the loss of her child, and Lincoln is helping her grieve in the most comfortable way possible. See, look how happy she is as they transition. Lincoln does a wonderful job. Now then, we move on to the movie. And yes, for those who are wondering, it's a pretty lengthy movie. But if you don't mind the lengthiness, Lincoln is basically going door to door to try and convince people to convince the congressmen and the senators and all those political figures. Yes, they were actual political figures, not the kind that Trump has. To try and abolish slavery because it's important. It's an iconic historical piece of American history that Lincoln is trying to change. Still struggling to find votes. Lincoln tries to persuade her that you should not be afraid. It's good to have change. Because that's what the world is. It's all about changes. You see how things have evolved in the 21st century? Technology's given way. For those who are afraid of technology and, we like the old-fashioned way, sometimes new is a good thing. And that's what Lincoln's basically saying in this particular portion of the movie. This, of course, leads to the most iconic scene of the movie, where they have this argument, and Lincoln just can't take it anymore. He needs to get these votes in, and he is determined to do whatever it takes to get those votes. That's impossible. He's honest Abe, for God's sakes. Lincoln never lies.
We are absolutely guaranteed to lose the whole thing. I don't need a goddamn abolition amendment. Leave the Constitution alone. Peace commissioners are here today. State by state, you can extradite.
Puts his hand down, literally, and gives this speech. In other words, the way to abolish slavery.
We're stepped out upon the world stage now. Now! The fate of human dignity in our hands. Blood's been spilled to afford us this moment. Now! 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 When you grousel and heckle and dodge about like pettifogging Tammany Hall hucksters, see what is before you. See the here and now. That's the hardest thing, the only thing that accounts. abolishing slavery by constitutional provision settles the thing for all coming time.
And changes history too, for that matter.
The millions now in bondage,
Which is basically what he says here.
unborn millions to come.
Basically what he's saying is, this is going to impact not only our generation, but future generations after us.
We need 2 yeses, 3 abstentions, 4 yeses, and 1 more abstention, and the amendment will pass. You got a night and a day and a night, several perfectly good hours. Now get the hell out of here and get him. Yes.
And technically, even though this kind of really isn't a Danielle Day-Lewis moment, it's iconic nonetheless.
I am the President of the United States of America, clothed in immense power. You will procure these votes.
Yeah, I'd hate to be the person who didn't procure these votes. You didn't procure the votes? Oh, you're out. I hereby banish you to another land. Oh yeah, Tommy Lee Jones, for those who want to know, was in this movie too, and he played a pretty important part too. So, eventually, the votes do pass, the amendment does come to fruition, and slavery is abolished. This leads to the end of the Revolutionary War. Lincoln gets another term as president. And just when you think everything's right with the world, we come to the end of the movie. The iconic scene at Ford's Theater where Lincoln's watching the play, and if you've watched history or learned history or read history, you know what happens. Lincoln is shot.
The President has been shot.
Leading to a panic attack. You know what's iconic about this date? It happens to be on the same day as my creator's birthday, which just so happened to have passed this weekend. And of course, we all know that the next night, Lincoln dies and moves on to a better life, and that basically is the end of the movie right there. So it's a sad way to end an otherwise terrific movie, but it's for the purpose of history. History that is so important, because it's a wonderful way to portray the most iconic event in Abraham Lincoln's presidential run. The end of the Civil War, the passing of the amendment that abolished slavery, and Daniel Day-Lewis does a tremendous job portraying Lincoln. And I, for one, think this is an absolutely terrific movie. Really, really well planned. I know it's a bit lengthy, but if you don't mind the length, this is a really good movie, and it really shows how great Daniel Day-Lewis is. So I, for one, definitely recommend that, especially if you're a historian or a political figure who happens to like history. This is definitely it for you. So with that, we have one more Daniel Day-Lewis movie to review. And it's probably one of his better ones, if not the best of them all. So stay tuned for that. I'm the CommanderZander. I remembered something that sounds great down now too, and neither should you.